What are the expectations for Venezuela in the beginnings of this new year 2022? We continue with an exclusive interview to President Nicolas Maduro from Ignacio Ramonet. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. President. It is a pleasure to be with you here. Thank you very much for receiving us. Thank you all for rating us this interview. This interview is already becoming what we could call a classic, right? As if we were soccer. This gathering of ours, just like Real Madrid and Barcelona, for example, right? These are end-of-year exchanges which you have allowed us in recent years. This is the fourth time we've done it, and this is the sixth time we have actually done it at the end of the year, which will allow, on the one hand, let us say, in our conversations, for you to make an assessment of the year that is ending, and on the other hand, also to present perspective for the year that is coming, 2022. Right. This interview will be divided into three themes: domestic policy, the economy, the international policy, and I would like to end with the last question on a much bigger topic that you will discover when you are asked. We begin with domestic policy. In Venezuela, there has been, as in other countries, during the year 2021 has been characterized by the presence of COVID, the pandemic. It has continued to be important just as in 2020, the second year of COVID. But at this moment, these last weeks, a kind of tsunami is coming. According to WHO, organization itself announces the Omicron variant that we are seeing in Europe at this moment. So the question is, how is Venezuela facing the Omicron threat? Will be the method that you put in place to fight COVID be effective against Omicron? And finally, can you give us an idea of how the vaccination is going, the state of vaccination in Venezuela? Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this round of conversations that we have always had to make the balance, the evaluation of the years, which we started in the year 2016. Do you remember? It was in December. And well, whoever wants to observe the evolution, whoever wants to evaluate the forecasts and the results of this reality, there you have it. 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and now 21, heading towards 22. This is a very important conversation to evaluate all of this. So I send greetings to all the followers of your interviews, your articles, and to everyone who in the world can watch and listen to us. Now, this presence of the Omicron variant, what is telling the world is that the virus is not over yet, that the virus is here to stay until further notice. And that is not true the predictions that we are close to the end of this virus, of this pandemic. That is necessary to combine preventive health biosecurity measures, the mass vaccination, with the scientific research in search of solutions and treatments for this virus, which has had so many variants. This Omicron variant has dozens of mutations, which makes it more contagious. So far, the studies that have been carried out in the world, this variant is not more lethal, but being more contagious, the phenomenon is increasing. So we see in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, in France, in the United States, thousands and thousands of cases. In the United States, there were 250,000 cases in one single day. In Spain, there were 1,400 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. it means 100 cases per day. 100,000 cases per day. We have made a great effort with a lot of discipline, with a lot of leadership, with a lot of leadership from the revolution, from the public health system. We have with our doctors, with our nurses, from which we call the mission Barrio Adentro 100% health, with a lot of leadership from the Bolivarian government being present and guiding the people. The key element in prevention is the awareness, is the education of the people. If people are motivated, if people are alert, well informed, people take care of themselves. If you really give people good reasons on a permanent basis to take care of themselves, the result is that the people tend to take their biosecurity measures and not to neglect them. We have had a method since 2020, and this year practically all year round, which practically lifted in the month of November, which is the 7+7 method as we call it, and it allows us to write the time of this year 2021. In this year, the Brazilian variants arrived here, the two Brazilian variants, the Delta variant arrived, which were more lethal, and all of them came and entered through Colombia and Brazil. And now we have just detected the Omicron variant. And we have maintained in relation to the world, especially what they call the developed world, the United States, Europe, and those countries, in relation to the number of infections and deaths and the percentage they have. Venezuela has had an example control over the pandemic. We have to maintain this, the 7+7 method. And when we started to advance in vaccination, we have already vaccinated 40% of the population. We restarted classes and we also allowed flexibilities in the measures, in the biosecurity measures, but total flexibility. This is how the country has been working since the month of November. The month of December has been a spectacular thing of people in the streets, in public squares, boulevards, parks, parties. It has been a truly tremendous Christmas time, happy for the people. And look, in spite of the great movement of people, you can see that our cities take care of themselves. People are taking care of themselves. There will be a person around here who, because of tiredness of a certain unclearness, suddenly stops wearing a mask. But it is just for a moment. Fundamentally, people are taking care of themselves. Venezuela, we are reaching truly impressive numbers, has just reached 6 cases per 100,000 inhabitants, when Spain, United States, and other developed countries, right, they are not. They are the countries that have the wealth of the world, right? Well, this is the humble country called Venezuela is reaching 6 cases per 100,000 inhabitants, and despite the fact that we are reaching that number, which is a truly impressive figure, we maintain the care of and the leadership of over the population so that it continues to take care of itself, the population. And we also set ourselves the goal of reaching 90% of vaccination. You have to take into account that the sanctions, the blockade, the economic persecution of the United States against Venezuela this year, they wanted us to run out of vaccines, Ramonet. They threatened all the vaccine companies in the world with sanctions if they would sell vaccines to Venezuela. The world needs to know that the U.S. government threatened all the companies in the world. Then they say it was a lie. And, well, we did our part intentionally. And we managed to have all the vaccines that the country needed this year, and we have reached 90% of vaccination by the end of the year 2021. I'm telling you this as a scoop. 90% of the population are vaccinated. And I can also tell you that we have a stock. And during the month of January, new batches of vaccines will arrive We have in stock and already budget in our hands all the vaccines that the people of Venezuela need for the booster during the year 2022. All the vaccines. The world should know that we are vaccinated from 2 years of age and up, and we started vaccinated from 18 years age and onwards, and we started vaccinating pregnant women, including pregnant women that we started vaccinating from, also people who were among 12 and 18 years old. And this will give us a stronger immunity. They will give us more powerful protection for our population. So I believe that the virus will continue to affect humanity. We will have to continue to be alert, to use the correct method to apply. We cannot abandon the 7+7 method, nor we can renounce preventive measures, but always in a volunteer and conscious manner. The preventive measures cannot be imposed to the people with curfews, with repression. The preventive measures have to be based on winning the awareness and the will of the people, to demonstrate the fairness of these measures to protect their health. We do not renounce to preventive measures. We do not renounce to the 7+7. And in this coming year, I hope that by achieving the vaccination of 90% of the population, including children from 2 years of age onwards, we will be a peaceful country that will be working with its social life fairly normalized and enjoying it as it has been enjoying it during these 2 last months of the year 2021. Dear President, after the regional and municipal elections of November 21st, which have been elections, I say this to remember what it was for our viewers who may be outside Venezuela. More than a month ago, there were elections here for governors and also regional assemblies, and likewise there were elections for mayors and also for municipal councils. Regarding these elections, I would like you to comment on the results, the balance you make from the electoral point of view in terms of how the political forces are in the country, and to what extent do you think that these results reveal the current state of forces in politics in the country here in Venezuela? That's correct. The mega elections on Sunday, November the 21st of last year, gave a sovereign result. This electoral campaign was not easy. I said that on several occasions before to the campaign committee of the Patriotic and Revolutionary Forces led by Comrade Diosdado Cabello Rondon. These elections are not easy because, well, the blockade, the sanctions have created problems of public services, problems in the daily life of the people. And, well, a part of the population does not understand that this is a result of the sanctions, and it has been bothering them. It has created dissatisfaction, discomfort in part of the population. This is a little of what the U.S. imperialism seeks with all these sanctions, to squeeze a country, to crush it, as it has done with Venezuela. It seeks confusion, discomfort, the protest of the people. This is what they have sought with their coercive unilateral measures, the sanctions, the persecution of the economy, of public finances, of trade, of free trade in Venezuela. I was telling the comrades, look, this problem that we have in important public services such as water. There are problems also that we have to identify that have remained from the sabotage of the electric systems. There are the problems that have remained in the solid waste services, that problems they need to be solved by mayors and governors in the regions. problems that are real with the scarcity of spare parts, pieces, equipment that any country in the world is renewing to maintain its public services. They have a stock of spare parts, a stock of pieces and parts that allows them to maintain in operation without any decline. If we were to buy spare parts for a water pump, the great majority, 90% of the water in Venezuela has to be taken from the rivers, from the small rivers that come from the big rivers, from the cities to the cities. And that is a higher situation. If you are going to buy an engine, if you are going to buy a water pump of a certain magnitude or spare part, then the government of the United States persecutes Venezuela so that it cannot acquire them. Now, how do you explain this to the population? Okay, we explain this to them, so there is a part of the population that do understand it, and perfectly, yes, it does. They understand, and they in a heroic way, they continue supporting the revolution with awareness, but there is another part of the population that has come to not be in relation with this revolution, and they protest. This is not an easy election, and I'm telling you this because we were aware of this. We went to the primary election process to elect our candidates by popular vote. The primary elections were good popular participation. But after that, Ramonet, there were wounds left in the regions, in the states, in the municipalities. Many times they were divided into three groups, in one state, or in one municipality, or in that city, and so on. And then, if, for instance, Ramonet or Maduro ran for governor of one state and Ramonet won, then Maduro would take all his people with him, and they did not vote for Ramonet. And that happened in some municipalities, in some states. It was a hard battle. And even though that we won, and in spite of that, it was allowed in some municipalities and some states, in this case 3 states of the Republic out of 23 governorships were won by the opposition. In many of these mayorships and governorships, the loss is explained by the divisions of the intrigues and the confrontations between all those groups that were divided. I have to say this. This is the first time I said, Ramonet, in this conversation. In the primary elections, there were wounds that are unbreachable in the most of the states and municipalities of the country, which were dealt with in different ways by the sectors of the right wing of the opposition, and that gave us the hardest battle, Ramonet. But in spite of the circumstances, the difficult objectives of this, the product of the sanctions and the difficult subjective circumstances, we had a great victory, Ramonet. We won 65% of the majorities and municipal councils of the country. We won the 80% of the governorships of the country with our own leadership, a renewed leadership with deep roots in the people, in the real leadership, Ramonet. Those leaders we have in the streets, in the communities, in the neighborhoods, in the parish, in the municipalities, and in the states are real leaders, real. We have built a system of leadership and a truly impressive system of forces that make it possible these tremendous victories. I would say surely this interview is going to be seen by many leaders of the left and leaders of the so-called revolutionary progressive movement. I would say, after all the war they have waged against Venezuela, how is it that the Bolivarian and Chavista forces obtained these tremendous victories? In Venezuela, we have held 29 elections in 22 years, and this is the victory number 27. We are, as I always say, like this wood, we are for real, we are for real. We have a leadership, we face the people. We are with the people in good times and in bad times. We are able to renew our discourse, our political program. We are capable of renewing ourselves spiritually. We are capable of renewing our smile and look the people in the eyes. And I would say, what leftist force, what revolutionary force, what political force of any ideology in the world today can obtain a victory like the one obtained by the Bolivarian movement, the Chavista movement in Venezuela? Let each one reach his or her own conclusion. In any case, I believe that it has been an important impulse. It shows that we are the majority in the country and that we have a solid base to promote economic recovery, to recover the social welfare state, and to build what we are going to build, new majorities, new forces. We must add, Mr. President, in this context that this victory also took place within a very democratic framework, elections that have been, let's say, held under supervision of many international overseers. Right. It is practically the only victory of a ruling party in this context of COVID in the war. In the United States, the ruling party is losing. At this moment, the ruling party is losing in Germany. The one who was in power before lost, Donald Trump. That is why Biden is also losing. Also, Merkel lost in Norway, also lost in Macri lost, Piñera in Chile. Exactly, that's right. The right wing in Peru. All of these elections that have been made in this COVID era, the result is that the ruling party has difficulty of carrying out these elections. I would like you to talk about the relationship with the opposition. You had a dialogue with the opposition in Mexico, a dialogue that was mediated through Norway. But this dialogue was interrupted, particularly after the arrest and extradition of Alex Saab, who had diplomatic status and was extradited to the United States. I want to ask you, Mr. President, under what conditions do you intend to resume the dialogue with the opposition, the most radical opposition in Mexico? It is important to take into account, Ramonet, that I have called for the dialogue during these more than 8 years, almost 9 years that I have been president on more than 1,000 occasions. In all circumstances, I have called for political dialogue with all the oppositions, for debate, for understanding. Because I am a man of dialogue and peace. I believe in dialogue, in understanding, in debate. And every time there has been dialogue, we have found the path of consensus and peace. I am against political violence, totally, that the opposition has brought to Venezuela for several years in several opportunities, like Guarimba in the year 2014 and Guarimba in 2017. I am against the calls they have made to invade Venezuela by the Gringo Army to the Imperial Army of the United States. And in this opportunity, after several efforts with the Kingdom of Norway, with Russia, with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, among others, with Mexico, we managed to establish a bridge of understanding with the extremist opposition, with the opposition that is outside the Constitution, the Guaidocista opposition, the Trumpist opposition, what Trump left, the opposition outside the Constitution. We are looking for means to understand with them. It means that we arrive in Mexico after many private, pendular, secret, semi-secret meetings. Why that Guaidocist opposition was going around with its high-sounding discourse, shooting and talking nonsense, they were meeting with us in secret. And we managed to sign an agreement, a memorandum where the Guaidocist opposition for the first time recognized the the legal constitution of Venezuela, of the government that I ruled. That was discussed a lot, and it was expressly set as a condition. Either you recognize and sign the recognition of this constitutional government, or there is not dialogue with you. The dialogues were going very well, I can say. We were already entering into the depth of these great issues of reestablishment of the Venezuela, of the economy, against the criminal sanctions of everything regarding the country. And once again, when we were already entering into the big issues and there were pre-agreements on the table, we were going to give the good news and the great news for the country. Once again, the government of the United States and the State Department, in behalf of them, took an action which they knew beforehand was going to provoke the breakdown of the dialogues. Do you think it was sabotage? I think so. I expressly think, I have no doubt it was an expressed sabotage by the government of the United States against the dialogues in Mexico. Because we talked about this with the government of the United States. The opposition itself, its coordinator Gerardo Blades, spoke about it in Washington with the State Department, and they gave him guarantees, and they gave us guarantees that they were not going to take Alex Saab, our diplomat, so that the dialogues would continue to be productive. And then Alex Saab, we incorporated him. He began to participate via video conference in the dialogues. Now, the United States has struck a stab in the back to the dialogues in Mexico. Why did they do it? Why? Why did they do it, really? We have to ask ourselves. Everyone should ask themselves why the United States keeps sabotaging a dialogue that is beneficial for the country, that is going to give results to Venezuela, that is going to consolidate peace and stability in our institutional democracy. They kidnapped Alex Saab. They took him away without warning and without protest. And now Alex Saab is kidnapped in a jail in La Florida. They are holding him hostage. They are accusing him of 1,000 false accusations. And he continues, Alex Saab, he continues to be the representative of the dialogue in Mexico. There will have to be a big change in this matter related to the kidnapping of Alex Saab for us to return to Mexico. We will see what happens in January and February. Let us wait with good expectations for the month to come. Mr. President, we are going to talk about the economy now. And we are going to talk about the economy, and I wanted to tell you something that all the analysts who were so critical of Venezuela's economic situation a few years ago are saying. And today, all observers know that despite the blockade by the United States or the European Union, despite the coercive unilateral measures, there is a very clear improvement of the economic situation in Venezuela. I would like you to tell us, how do you explain what is the reason for this economic improvement that all observers are noticing at this moment when they analyze the economic situation of the country? Well, first of all, Venezuela has its own engines to face its economic needs. I have been saying it for a long time. Venezuela has its own economic engines. It has its own economic strength, it has industrial capacity, it has technological capacity, it has the know-how to move forward with its own engines and replace the old capitalist economy dependent on oil. The oil rent economy that was installed in Venezuela for 100 years. An economy totally dependent on the petrodollar. The economic sanctions, without a doubt, had a terrible impact on the economic life of the country, on the economic income of the country, and therefore on the economic income of the states, of the working class, of the Venezuelan family, of the Venezuelan businessman. It was like an atomic bomb of 440 coercive measures and sanctions of the Trump era against Venezuela, like an atomic bomb. The persecution against oil production, the persecution against gold production, the attack against the currency, the persecution against the cryptocurrency created as an alternative for international trade. I launched a Bolivarian economic agenda. That economic agenda that has 17 engines, and we have developed each one of those engines in accordance with their strategy. And we implemented in a gradual manner measures to liberate the productive forces in the war economy scheme. This is not a normal economy. You can see, for example, the economies of Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Brazil. They are economies. None of them are subjected to any measures of persecution, of limitation of their freedom of trade, of limitation of their monetary or financial freedom. Venezuela has the de facto war economy, imposed brutally. Sometimes I see some people making statements about Venezuela in the world, including people who call themselves progressives, and they do not know what it's like to face a situation like this. I would like to see them through the eyes of some of those leaders who call themselves progressive, speaking stubbornly about Venezuela when they do not know what we have suffered and how from suffering we have gone on and on a resistance and now to growth. We have taken a set of measures. Here I have an economic document of the balance sheet that I am preparing to present before the National Assembly in January in Venezuela. This is part of the economic recovery program in August 2018. We are already launching elements to adapt the economy to the war economy. We have made progress of these years. First, we abolished the law of illicit exchange in order to facilitate the circulation of the currency, of the foreign currency, the fundamental element, by keeping the bolivar as our own currency. We made the movement of international currency more flexible. The price control scheme was replaced by a scheme of agreed prices, which, although it was very weak, it helped. Tax reforms were carried out, and a public spending and investment program was implemented to reduce the fiscal deficit. And we made it very good progress in reducing the fiscal deficit. An exchange market was created, which did not exist in Venezuela. We were adapting and creating mechanisms for a war economy. Subsidies were optimized. For instance, the subsidies to interest rates on credits and subsidies to oil. A new legal framework was developed to facilitate and secure investments, and the anti-blockade law was approved. We also reactivated the dialogue mechanism with all the private sectors of the country. Today we have a close relation with all the medium, small, big national and international sectors. We have a permanent dialogue in the National Council of Productive Economy. Oil production and the production of the country's refineries The petrochemical complex and the upgraded complexes have gradually recovered. We are recovering the tariff policy, which is very important as a mechanism to promote and defend the national production within a framework of respect for international agreements with the slogan Venezuela First, what is ours first, to protect the national industry, to protect national producers. This year we implemented what experts call the monetary reexpression. We eliminated six zeros from the Bolivar currency and we strengthened the psychological point of view, the management of the Bolivar within a general framework of improvement of the economy, the launching of the digital Bolivar. As a result of this set of measures, Ramonet, in a systematic, sustained, and coherent manner, the Venezuelan economy at this moment is in a clear period of recovery. I can tell you that we have recovered economic growth, and in the second half of the year 2021, we are having economic growth of 7.5%. It means that the economy with its own engine, with its own strength, the real economy has taken the path of economic growth. This is great news. This is a non-oil economy, although the oil economy is also growing, but the non-oil economy no longer depends on petrodollars, but on its own effort, its self-financing capacity, and the domestic market. We have stimulated the domestic market with an impressive reactivation of the domestic trade. Therefore, without any doubt, the greatest achievement of all of this has been the defense of our economy model. Venezuela is building its economy, promoting growth with opportunities for all, but above all, thinking of the most vulnerable, the most needed, according to our humanist and socialist approach. This means that 2021 has been the best year since the economic war began, and I believe that we must continue to be very alert to the development of the economy, to provide facilities so that the internal productive forces continue to be released, and to continue controlling all the inflation process. Now in December, we are closing the year with good news from the inflation point of view. That is what I wanted to ask you about, President, because inflation continues to be a concern for the population. And the question is, what measures do you intend to adopt to reduce inflation or make it disappear? Although inflation is currently making a comeback all over the world due to issues also linked to the post-COVID pandemic world. But how is the inflation issue here in Venezuela? Venezuela has always had an economy with inflation. Before the economic war, before the coercive measures, before the economic war scheme, an economy with 6 years of oil income and high consumption of the domestic market that always generated an imbalance between the domestic consumption capacity resulting from the petrodollars with the production capacity and the satisfaction of those needs. In addition, we have always had a tendency of the private sector to speculate in order to obtain the maximum profit. These are two elements that have crossed economic life in the last 60, 70 years when this period of intense war came to crush Venezuela. Well, the economic measures made the Venezuelan state lose 99% of its income, Ramonet. In other words, one day we went from having $100 to having $1. We went one day from having $54,000 million in 1 year to last year's income of $600 million because of the persecution against the accounts, the kidnapping of the bank accounts. They stole from us more than $30,000 million abroad, and they have kept them kidnapped. For the robbery of the confiscation of the Cito company in the United States of the monomers company, it is brutal. I tell you, it's like an atomic bomb. Now, if there is no income, that had a tremendous impact on the capacity of the state to regulate the market, the foreign exchange market, in this case, the dollar market. And that had a tremendous impact on the hyperinflation that took hold in Venezuela. They wanted to combat hyperinflation in the first place was social protection through what we call Carnet de la Patria. And all these missions and great missions for the people. The first was social protection for the people, and the second, well, has been a set of economic, monetary, and financial measures. You ask me, what has to be done? Well, we have to deepen what we have been doing. We must attack one of these bases of inflation and increase the production capacity of food, goods, and services so that the supply capacity balances the demand or even exceeds it. This is sometimes a fundamental element of inflationary process in Venezuela and anywhere in the world. The other thing is to increase the national income. The national income allows us to govern, to rule the exchange market and satisfy the exchange market. The foreign currency needs of the economy to move and control even more, totally control the inflation process generated by the movement of the dollar within the country. For instance, we have managed to stabilize with this exchange system everything that was the dollar that was shooting up in the country. It has been stabilized, slowed down, and I am very hopeful that in the year 2022 we will be able to continue ruling the new exchange system that the country has according to the economic war scheme. Likewise, at the inflation level, Venezuela has already had 4 consecutive months of one-digit inflation. Today we can say and declare politically, and surely the economic authorities will do so in the coming months, but I can declare politically that the result of this management of inflation between the month of September, October, November, and December, which has been in a single digits with a downward trend, that Venezuela is leaving the state of hyperinflation, product of the economic war and the sanctions. Venezuela takes a step forward. We are entering the year 2022. I believe that this year will combine important elements of growth and the slowing down inflation of the wealth generations. We will allow the most important things of all, that all that wealth will be converted into education, that will transition towards a human socialist model. President, this is even more significant because oil production has not seen a dramatic growth. Let's say that Venezuela was not used to having an economy in which oil was not the most important element. So I would like you to tell us a little bit about how the oil in Venezuela at the moment is doing, how is the production, what are the consequences, and what are the nuts that still exist in Venezuela economy, which should be entitled to allow a greater growth. Well, the main issue is the generation of monetary wealth that will allow us to make sufficient investments in the economic apparatus, in the oil apparatus, and sufficient investments in the social welfare system, that the country may experience a process of economic and social expansion, of economic and social growth. The main issue is the national income. Therein lies the element, and it is the main point of the attack of the U.S. imperialism. What is being done against Venezuela is criminal. It's cruel. The leaders of the progressive left and social democratic right, any leader who may be listening to me should know that the experience of Venezuela will remain as one of the cruelest crimes ever attempted against the people. Because everything has been done. The world must know. I sometimes explain it in international meetings, in video conferences. The world must know the persecution that has taken place against accounts. Venezuela state cannot have a bank account in the international financial system, for example, to pay for vaccines, for medicine, supplies, raw materials, whatever it needs. Venezuela does not have the right to import spare parts, the machinery needed by its oil industry, its refineries, its petrochemical, its industry in general. Venezuela does not have the right. They have tried to deny it freedom of trade for its national product, its fundamental products, and they persecute companies, bank accounts, people, ships, who try to come and take from Venezuela's products and sell them to the world. They are persecuted. That is why I have said faithfully and convinced that I am on the path to build a non-oil productive wealth-generating economy that satisfies the needs of the people. Faithfully and convinced that I am on the path left by the project of Commander Hugo Chavez. In the view of these extreme conditions that we have to deal with, to live, and that we have to face, I see this extreme condition as an opportunity to move forward in this path, on the rightness of this path, and of this opportunity to generate wealth. Venezuela is reaching 1 million barrels of oil production per day. We set a target of 1,200,000 for this year. PDVSA still owes me 200,000 barrels. Well, it is really a tremendous achievement of the workers from the refinery, with practically no money. Oil production is an economic activity with a high use of financing, high investment. It is a high investment to recover the wells, to put technology in the wells, and that investment is recovered very quickly. Anyone who knows the oil business knows how it works. We are recovering oil production with Venezuelan investment of our own, penny by penny, to recover one well, recover another well, and that is the way we are doing it, Ramonet. That's how we are doing it. This year we reached 1 million. Next year's goal is to reach 2 million barrels per day, to go step by step, steady, recovering the production capacity. This year we recovered the production capacity of the country's 4 refineries in spite of the attempts to bomb them, to sabotage our refineries with terrorism. A great achievement of the oil workers. This year we achieved the recovery of more than 90% of the petrochemical production capacity. This means that the Venezuelans are refining and petrochemical industry with its own lungs, with its own investments and effort, with its own technology. All those who listen to us should know that the system with which Venezuela's oil refining and petrochemical industry was built was 100% Gringo or European. So there is still a part of the productive process that is paralyzed, spoiled, damaged, that depends on the outside 100%. And the gringos know that. The imperialism knows that, and that is why they attacked for years until our engineers, our scientists came, workers, and they began to create pieces and spare parts with national engineering and to recover walls, etc. So it is a truly heroic road. Venezuela is working very hard. Our country is working to build an economy that is not dependent on oil, that generates goods and services, that really satisfies the national need, a generator of alternative wealth, monetary wealth, and we are also working for the recovery of the powerful oil industry that will complement this wonderful way the whole process of economic development of Venezuela. President, we are now going to talk about international politics, and in particular, I would like us to start talking about the United States. In the United States, there has been, at the beginning of this year, an important political change since Democratic President Joe Biden has replaced a Republican President, Trump. However, the U.S. policy towards Venezuela has not changed at all. It continues to be extremely hostile. Speaking of it, what do you have to say? What initiatives do you count on adopting to have a contact, relations? Perhaps you have them, and can you reveal them to us here? What are the relations that Venezuela currently maintains with the current U.S. government? Well, I have to say that Donald Trump left, but the empire remained, and the empire is intact. Biden arrived with a great promise of change, of a great change for the American society, and a great change for humanity. In relation to Venezuela, everything has remained the same. The financial, monetary, and oil economic and commercial persecution. There has been not one sign, not a single sign of improvement, of rectification, of all these cruel measures. When we went to Mexico, we went with the understanding that by sitting down to talk with the extremist white opposition, we were sitting down to talk with the United States. And the U.S. government, in public statements, made it clear. But well, we already know what the fate of the negotiations in Mexico was. It was from the north that they made the stab in the back to derail the peace negotiations in Mexico. So, well, I think that, and I always say to my comrades, to the leaders, to all the political leaders that we have, from the great patriotic pole of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, the governors, or the leadership of the revolution here in Venezuela, I have to say, and also to the people, we cannot expect anything but from ourselves. A thought of José Gervasio Artigas, which Commander Hugo Chavez liked to repeat. Let us expect nothing but from ourselves. Let us stand on our truth, on our reason, on our Bolivarian project, and let us move forward. There is imperialism. Let them be. They are there with their accusations and persecutions. Here we are with our work, with our daily struggle, with our truth, with our achievements, with our progress. Hopefully, who knows when and with whom, the possibilities of a direct, sincere, and understanding dialogue will be open in the future with the government of the United States. Maybe it could be with the Joe Biden's government. If it happens, very well. If it does not happen, we continue our struggle, our battle. This is our struggle to walk with our own feet, to think with our own heads, as Ho Chi Minh would say. Mr. President, you were talking earlier about Venezuelan assets abroad. In particular, you mentioned the Citgo company, the oil company located in the United States physically. You mentioned Monomeros, which is located in Colombia. And there is also the question of the Gulf reserves deposits in the United Kingdom. What initiatives is your government taking to try to recover these assets? Well, we are permanent diplomatic and political and legal activity. We took a lawsuit in London for the recovery of the gold holdings of the Central Bank of Venezuela. There, sufficient evidence was provided by the legitimate authorities recognized nationally and worldwide by the United Nations system, the legal authorities of the Central Bank of Venezuela, of the constitutional national government of Venezuela. If these trials were adjusted to the real truth, to the legal truth, and to justice, the gold that belongs to Central Bank of Venezuela and that is part of the reserves and assets of Venezuela should be returned to Venezuela. In the case of the Citgo company in the United States, you should know that the Citgo is a company that has 6 refineries in the United States territory, more than 7,000 gasoline stations. It is a company that made important contributions at the end of the years and that we administered in a transparent, neat manner. And all these contributions that they gave came to Venezuela to be converted into economic investment in the housing, education, health, food. There are clear figures of all the incomes from this company. In addition, there was a foundation of humanitarian aid to children, I don't know if it is still working, which was totally dismantled. And they began to use its resources for illicit activities, for personal and family activities of the group of bandits, of the ultra-right wing, who have got their claws into this company. Well, we will also continue to seek through the legal judicial channels, although in the United States, but there is no possibility of guarantee in this first process for the government of Venezuela to recover it from Citgo. There is none. It's an imperial justice. They impose themselves and that's it. And they have kidnapped Citgo, its property, its asset, its bank accounts. The same happens with Monomeros, a company that was in blue numbers, positive numbers, a company well managed by the revolution, which has been bankrupt, destroyed by Juan Guaido, Leopoldo Lopez, and all that bunch of mafia and bandits. That's the truth. In this, there is a political, a diplomatic fight. In this, there is also a legal fight that we must give because the rights of the country prevail. These people have shown the moral decay in which they move. They put their claws in these companies, in these assets, like birds of prey. And what have they done? They have stolen them. They have shared them out like booty. And not to mention Ramonet, the $1.6 billion that the U.S. government said more than a year ago that it was given to the Guaido's opposition, and they kept it quiet. They threw a little bit of the dirt on the subject, but it is $1.6 billion of the U.S. taxpayer. Someday, jurists will emerge. Good people will look for the truth about where the money came from, to understand who did they give it to and how did they misuse the money. These are the people who are against. We are fighting against Ramonet, a very corrupt, ultra right wing. And it is good that this is public and the people know who we are facing. Mr. President, let us talk about Latin America. Lately, in these regions, elections are taking place, and these elections, during them, the victories of the progressive sides are multiplying, like in Honduras, in Chile, in particular. And the polls and these moments also seem to announce progressive victories in the Latin American left. Next year in Colombia, the elections will be held in May, and in Brazil, the elections will occur in October 22. How do you analyze this situation? How do you explain so many progressive victories at this moment in Latin America? Well, neoliberalism is deeply and absolutely exhausted. This model has been maintained for at least 20 years on the basis of lies, manipulations, electoral fraud in many countries, on the basis of the division of the progressive side in many opportunities, on the basis of repression, as that is the case of Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, and as it was in previous governments in the case of Peru, with blood and fire. Those right-wing and neoliberal governments imposed their packages on the basis of repression and lies. Bolsonaro has also imposed his neoliberal model in Brazil. But this has no more answers for the people. It is exhausted, totally exhausted. Venezuela is at the forefront. Venezuela has always been in the avant-garde, Ramonet, and I humbly say it, but it is our historical truth. On February the 28th, in 1989, the people of Venezuela were the first to rise up against the International Monetary Fund with the government of Carlos Andrés Pérez. It was the first popular uprising. It was 32 years ago. Am I right? 32 years ago. We will now celebrate on February the 4th the first uprising against neoliberalism. It was a rebellion against the oligarchy, against the neoliberalism. And we were the first to rise up. And then the Bolivarian project was the first anti-neoliberal project that came to power with votes. December the 6th, 1998. We have just celebrated 23 years since the first anti-neoliberal victory of the revolutionary force, because that's what we are, a revolutionary force. We are not only an anti-neoliberal force, we are not only a lefty force. We define ourselves as a transforming revolutionary force, a historical Bolivarian force. Well, from that triumph, then, came the first wave, the arrival of Lula, the arrival of Néstor Kirchner, the arrival of Frente Amplio in Uruguay with Tabaré Vázquez, the return of Daniel Ortega's Frente Sandinista, the emergence and triumph of Evo Morales in Bolivia, the emergence and triumph of Rafael Correa, the progressive forces of the Caribbean, and the historical Cuba of Fidel, Raúl, and now of Miguel Díaz-Canel. Thus, the first wave was formed that allowed us to advance in the creation of ALBA, Petrocaribe, UNASUR, CELAC, the reunion in the diversity of ideologies and policies, the reunion of Latin American and the Caribbean. and it was possible to set the course for the years and decades to come. And now a second wave is taking place, very different from the first one, but it also has a fundamental anti-neoliberal cut. The peoples have awakened, and hopefully the leaders and the political forces that are emerging in Latin America will be loyal to the historical legacies of those who preceded them, those who died, who gave their blood for a deep change, a historical change in Latin America. And hopefully, and may the course of these years to come, this anti-liberal blooming take a united course so that Latin America, in its own diversity, in its own complex diversity, can find itself again its own path, the path of union, of liberation. Mr. President, to finish, I would like to ask you one last question to give us a more theoretical view, let us say. I have noticed that in several of your recent speeches you talk about the world changing its cycle, and you have also said repeatedly that it is also necessary at this time to change the political analysis. I would like you to explain to us how you see this change of cycle that is taking place in the world, and that what political analysis should be adapted to this change of cycle. This is a contribution we are making from Venezuela, so that the sectors of intellectuals and thinkers, of culture and political sectors can lead an enlightening debate on what historical era we are living in. Is this historical era from the year 2000 to the year 2010? From the year 2010 to the year 2020, the same as the one we are beginning to see now? We are noticing significant changes that deserve to be understood and require a transformation in politics, especially in the progressive revolutionary sectors of the left, the sectors that are transforming the world. 30 years ago, the Soviet Union collapsed, and a few understood the opportunities that existed for new projects. Many ended up from the left, morally, intellectually broken. Many ended up on the right, in the frustrations of pessimism. And frustration and pessimism are always the prologue to the denial of the objectives and transforming policies. Few resisted in the war. Well, it was after the fall of the Soviet Union that in Venezuela the Bolivarian project emerged, the leadership of Chavez, of Simón Bolívar National Project from our roots. We modestly made our contributions to the new paradigms of the revolutionary movement of the war. The impact of Chavez's leadership to the new paradigms of today, nobody denies it. Otherwise, we will not be in the center of the campaign that the imperialism promotes and finances in all the countries of the world against Venezuela, the Bolivarian Revolution, before against Chavez, now against me, in the television, radio, press, in Spain, Italy, Portugal. Wherever you see it, wherever there is a campaign against Venezuela, there must be a reason for this. If we were helpless, we would not have had the impact of the Bolivarian project, the leadership of Comandante Chavez, the Bolivarian Revolution. Now, with this experience of being born from the emergence of a new epoch, we propose to the revolutionary movement of the world, to the honest people of the world, to the progressive sector, that we see the changes that are taking place now, that we identify them very well. There are at least three elements that are having an increasing impact on change in the world, the emergence of another era, of another generation, of another mentality, of another discourse, of another way of looking at life and politics. At least three elements, Ramonet. First of all, well, the pandemic, it changed everything, and it hasn't announced its departure yet. It will leave its mark on the collective psyche, on the collective psychology, and how to assume social life. The pandemic has changed everything: social customs, way of relating. Well, it has emerged. You see it in the world. The denialists, certus who expose their own lives to deny, believing that it is a manipulation of the political systems of the world, the existence of the pandemic. The pandemic is an element that has come to stay and that has modified all social behaviors and that forces us to understand the new schemes of social relationships. The other element is the accelerated economic change, the new economic actors in the world. When you ask yourself, or you used to ask in the 50s and the 60s, give the name of the world's tycoon, people would say Rockefeller. And what was Rockefeller? Oil industry. When they ask you today, what are the tycoons of the world today? Huh? Elon Musk, space rockets technology. Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, communication, the owner of the world. The owner of the world is Zuckerberg. They call it digital capitalism. Digital capitalism or Bill Gates. They are already displacing Bill Gates right now. But Bill Gates means internet communication, smartphones. The economy and the relations that arise from the two economies are making an accelerating change in the way of being, in the awareness, and in the functioning of the distribution of wealth at global level. We must keep an eye on this. From Venezuela, we ask for help from all researchers, experts, specialists to understand more and to be able to adapt our vision and action to the new era that has already emerged. And third, which you insist on a lot, Ramonet, is the dominant character of the social networks in the social, cultural, and human relations of today's humanity. I have listened to several conferences you have delivered on how social networks have displaced the traditional media and how social networks have created a very powerful virtual reality, and how they trap the individual as such, as opposed to the old social media which generated great shades of collective social character. The dominant nature of social media alone has changed the world we live in. It is no longer possible to do politics without social networks. It's no longer possible to do marketing without it. You can't sell, if you want to sell a brand of glasses like this. Well, if you were to promote it on the radio or in the press, you wouldn't sell a single one. But if you promote it in TikTok, on Instagram, they will rip them out of your hands. It's another life, another world. That is why I have to say we have entered a new era, and from the Bolivarian Revolution we assume it. We are studying it to adapt ourselves, to renew ourselves, to make the changes we have to make, and that the forces of revolutionary change, the progressive, be at the forefront of the new era of these new times to come. Thank you very much, Mr. President. The theoretical reflection of this new world that is being established was particularly fascinating. Thank you very much. I just want to congratulate you for the new year, to congratulate you and the people of Venezuela in particular, and set the invitation for our next classic in 2023. Thank you, President. Thank you, Ramonet, and greetings to all the good people of the world. From Venezuela, we continue to receive with much love and much faith, and that we will continue to win. Thank you, Ramonet.